Welcome, hello and hi my creative friends. Today we are back into the world of paints with the original paint pen. From an innovative Japanese company comes what is supposedly the cat's pajamas of acrylic markers. With over 60 bright, bold, vibrant colors, multiple barrel sizes, and multiple tips comes a marker that can apparently draw on almost anything. Today, I give you the Posca Acrylic Markers. Posca! We have checked out the Posca pencils before and they were quite unique. So I really think it's high time we revisit Posca and check out what they're most well known for, which is, of course, the Posca Acrylic Paint Markers. Posca itself is a brand that was created in 1983 by Uni Mitsubishi, which is the giant Japanese stationery company known as Uniball. Uniball, or Uni to their friends, makes a huge amount of art and stationery products, and there's a pretty good chance you've actually got something of theirs in your pencil case right now. Posca the acrylic marker and Posca the brand are one and the same, and while they're not exactly the inventors of the acrylic marker concept, Posca is one of the earliest adopters, first producers, and still one of the most influential brands in the acrylic marker world. When we think acrylic markers, we think Posca. Posca paint pens are popular, very, very popular. Here in Australia at least, they have been the go-to paint pen for years, and until recently, pretty much the only acrylic markers you could actually buy in stores. Things have changed a bit. It's 2025, and that means we now have much more choice on our shelves. But for most people, Posca is still considered the gold standard. But with all these new options, does that still hold up? Are they actually still the best? And is the premium price, which they sort of have, still worth it? So let's find an answer to all of that and more as we answer that burning question: are they actually any good? First up, let's check out the design of the Posca acrylic markers. This and this are the Posca water-based paint markers. This is a 16 kit, simply called Colors, and an 8 kit called Pastel Colors. I thought a little bit ahead with this one for the art piece and figured I'd need a bit more color than the 16 offered to make it work, so I grabbed 2 kits. If we jump on over to the Posca site and we find the Posca marker section, right at the top it tells you 10 tips, 7 shapes. This is where it can get a little bit confusing and can be a little hard to visualize, but basically the letters tell you what the tip type is, and the number as they go up means the tip gets thicker. But the number isn't the width of the line the marker puts down. I think it's actually the circumference of the tip. Maybe. Anyway, for most of them, other than the chisel tips, the number is usually about double the line width they put down. There is quite an extensive amount of information about each marker, including color swatches, and if you spend some time with the technical data, there's pretty much everything you need to know about them. Back to our kits. They are basically the same, so let's just check out the basic 16 color kit. It is a clear plastic package containing what I'm assuming is a cardboard slip. From the front, we can see the marker caps, which gives you an idea of the colors. We have 16 colors Posca water-based paint markers and PC5M medium bullet tips. Happily, it also states a 2.5mm line under that, which is helpful. It's also quick drying water-based pigment ink. If we flip it, we can see the sides are clear, but the back has pretty much all the info you need to know, including the tip size and, importantly, how to prime these markers. Shake it vigorously, then on a sheet, press down the tip several times to start the paint flowing. If you don't know how paint markers work, it's great to have this here so clearly. If we open up that top, the caps basically act as our swatch. Let's check out one in closer detail. This is the Posca PC5M acrylic paint marker in white. It is a black plastic barrel tube pen covered in stickers with all the information you could possibly need. You can feel a stainless steel ball rolling around in here, and the lid is very secure. The markers themselves all arrive individually wrapped in plastic, lots and lots of plastic. The length of the barrel is a fraction over 140mm long, and the width of the 5M version is a portly 16.5mm. The barrel itself is a sticker-coated black plastic tube, which is apparently at least partially made using recycled plastic. plastic. The lid, which looks to be doubling as a swatch, has a fake black plastic clip on the end. It's just molded so it doesn't do anything. Our nibs, which are for the 5M version, made of fibrous polyester and work by gravity pumping our water-based acrylic paint through them. There is a lot of stuff on this barrel. Facing upwards, we have a silver uni logo in black, raised plastic on the matching coloured lid, followed by another uni on the barrel and the word Posca in vibrant colours. Following that is the colour name and code in 5 languages. Rotating our barrel, we have instructional diagrams, how to get the paint flowing, and tech details about the nib being PC5M, bullet shaped, and the expected line width from this tip. Continuing to rotate, our final side has business info and of course the ASTM non-hazardous rating. Talk about stuff on a barrel. These markers are absolutely choco-blocko full of information, which is useful when you're buying them separately or bored or want a book to read, but it really doesn't make these pens look super classy. There's just so much muchness on them, it's overwhelming. Talking about overwhelming, my biggest peeve so far is designish in nature. The numbering and sizing for these can be super confusing. These are the PC5M, which I ended up with because the size felt right in my hands. I know this because I actually went down to a real store and put my hands on them. Because as a newbie, when you're trying to buy these online, I found the numbering system on the Posca site very confusing and a bit hard to get my head around. The numbers aren't the size of the line put down or the barrel size. I think it's the diameter of the tip, but it's a bit hard to tell and figure that out until you actually see them and play with them. I sort of get it now after looking at them. 5 is the medium size, what I'd call old school marker barrel, and tip thickness. Then I guess 1 is thin and 17 must be super thick. But then there's also the brush tip that is a 350. If you're not familiar with them, it may be worth looking at them in person. Confusion aside, I still do like the black look Posca always goes for. It's different and it's modern, but I do wish there was less on it. Surely most of this stuff on the barrel could really just have been on the packaging. Anyway, design aside, let's see how these little guys perform. First up, let's swatch them. Posca states as of filming this, there are 66 colours available, but annoyingly, that's not for each marker range. It's actually across all of the ranges and tip combinations, with each range having a different colour amount available for it. The 5M we have here is currently the widest colour range with 49 colours. As always, I'd love to look at all of those colours, but I only have the 23 colours here in the 2 packs today to check out. But this should be more than enough for us to get a good idea. So let's get started. First things first, let's see how many pumps the Posca needs to get that paint flowing. 1, 2, 3, many, lots, more. If you're counting along at home, that was 27. That seems like a lot. I think I may need to shake this a bit more. Straight away, there we go, that's it. The paint doth flow. The white straight away is coming down really well actually. It's a nice, bright, vibrant white and really pleasantly opaque. Let's look at the black now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and a bit more of a shake. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So it's about 25 pumps until I can see the paint flowing through on the nib here. Then 7 more pumps and the paint is on the paper. So that looks like it's about 30 pumps to get these pens flowing. Our black, like our white, is really opaque and a really nice solid dark black. Let's prime that silver for our first metallic. That's a nice reflective metallic coat. I guess being so opaque, it makes a real difference in making that shine. Our grey is next. It's primed and the colour going down is again really matte and opaque. Next up is our gold. It's actually a little hard to see from the top camera because there is so much reflection. But if we look at the side camera, that's a really gold, really a reflective colour. The brown is going down nicely, although there is quite a lot of red in that brown, making it almost an ochre. The beige is, I guess, a very beige. It's more of a cream colour than anything else, setting up that yellow, and it's a super vibrant yellow for a yellow. Very poppy, probably the most poppy yet. Okay, so let's pound through the rest of these colors. When I'm using these, the markers themselves feel really solid and of good quality, but I do feel like I should be drawing on a wall somewhere because everything feels quite thick and robust. I am loving that one pass seems to be enough as well. Very opaque, and they are really quite beautiful. My tiny little swatches seem pretty inadequate to be using them on. I'm also finding they feel a bit scratchy on my paper, like a really heavy, really thick permanent marker. So much so that, as you may have noticed, it's actually causing my paper to pill up a bit here. Interestingly, as they are going down, the most translucent one so far has been green 6. It's a strange color to be so thin. Right, so I am on to my second kit now, which is the pastels. While they are quite soft, nice colors, they aren't super different from our first 16 color set, but hopefully they are different enough that I can use them a little to help out blending and gradients. Just for curiosity's sake, I'm gonna add another layer on that white and green. That's definitely made them better, but it has, of course, made the pilling worse. We're gonna have to do something about that. Overall, I am really pleased with the colors here. 23 colors isn't a huge amount, but for the color the Posca have put down, they are actually overall really quite vibrant, very saturated, and really, really exceptionally opaque. True, they have dried slightly less vibrant than they were when wet, but surprisingly, not massively so. I am loving how opaque these markers are. For most of these, I have only had to put down one layer of paint to get to a point where it feels really solid, which for a paint pen is really impressive. Being that solid does mean that the Posca are either all on or all off in what they can put down. But for something like these markers, that feels much better than feeling like I have to layer the colors up till it's solid. Feel-wise, using the markers, they do feel really quite solid in my hand. The tip itself is not super smooth though. Being a bullet tip, and I guess how it's made to keep that paint flowing, does make it feel a little bit scratchy. That scratchiness with the thickness of the paint has, unfortunately, as we saw, filled the paper. Every paper has a limit, and I think that we've hit that here. That's not really the pen or the paint's fault. A softer nib would have had less issues, but in this case, it's more of a case of me choosing the wrong paper for the job. As we all know, paper matters. And I didn't really think about this and just started with my standard 140 GSM white mixed multimedia paper, which, let's be honest, was a bad choice. So to continue our tests, we're going to up the game and the quality of our paper with a little bit of research. I think I'm going to do the rest of our tests on some Bristol paper. I've run out and I have bought myself some Strathmore 400 GSM marker paper. It's tough, made for markers, obviously, and I was able to get it at my local store. Hopefully, it should solve our pilling going forward. Let's give the Posca acrylic markers a mark for saturation and vibrancy. Using our scale of A to F, with S being superb, even though we only had 23 colors, those colors were really vibrant, and most importantly, most of them only needed one coat. I'm giving the Posca an A- for saturation and vibrancy. That puts them right up here on our admittedly very sparse scale. Last time we did acrylic markers, we also measured layering. There's a graph and everything to go along with it. In that layering test, we're basically just testing how many layers the pens needed to put down to be opaque. Surprise, surprise, looking at our swatches here, there's really no need to test layering with the Posca, as one layer is obviously, for the most part, more than enough. For excellent opacity, I'm giving the Posca an A+ for layering. Only missing out on our first ever S because of that weirdly wonky green. Because we're right here and I have the swatch sitting on my table, let's test some color accuracy. Our color accuracy test is very simple. I'm going to compare our color swatches we've just made to the color on the marker lids. As always, this is an important test, as the swatches is the easiest way for us to tell what color we actually have in our hand. Let's go and have a look. That white is decent, although I do think that the paint put down is actually brighter than the lid. The black is very close. Weirdly, the silver lid is different than the rest of our lids, as it looks like with the metallics, they have swapped from the swatch being on the outer lid barrel to the fake clip being the swatch. Color-wise, it's pretty close though. The grey lid is brighter than the swatch on the paper, and the gold, like the silver, is much more reflective on the paper, but the swatch is a richer gold. The brown is close, that beige is terrible, and the yellow and light green are not super close either. Our green is similar, but a bit better match. Pretty much all of this bottom row, from the light blue, blue, violet, pink, orange, and now red, are really decent matches. Our pastel range is going down well. I think for the most part, they're all actually pretty consistent. There's a bit of variety in one or the other being slightly darker than the paint put down, but overall, really good. Surprisingly, pretty decent overall. The metallics were a bit weird, what with the changing of the swatch to the fake clip part and a bit off color-wise. But interestingly, the paint that they did put down was much more reflective than the lid, which is great for a metallic. The worst one here, of course, was our beige pen. It's a very different color to the swatch and the lid. That is slightly annoying because it's sort of what I'd consider a skin tone, and I was planning on using it a lot for our art. But everything else was very close, and I think pretty acceptable for swatches for a paint pen. For essentially a great result, with one or two that were a little bit off, I'm giving the Posca an A- for the color accuracy. Much better color accuracy than I was expecting. Let's get a little bit more advanced with our testing here and actually try and blend these markers. Blending is not something you think of when you think of paint markers, but it is just acrylic paint, so in theory, they should be able to blend fairly well. Blending is also something that's probably going to be quite useful when we're doing our art piece a little later on as well, particularly because our color range is limited. It'd be nice to be able to mix up some other color variations. Let's see what happens. How we're doing this test is super easy. We're just going to take 3 colors, red 15, blue 8, and yellow 2, and see if we can make some secondary colors with them without too much effort. I'm going to use the yellow twice because being a lighter color, it's usually more dramatic when blending. So yellow with red and yellow with blue. Let's start by gradienting in with our yellow. The paint here is really thick, so that gradient doesn't really have much of a light end to it. Let's come in with our red. As soon as we hit that yellow, we've pretty much straight away produced a really easy, quite poppy orange. But because of that tip, it's not super smooth. I'm gonna go back over just for kicks and just to see if I can make that a little bit stronger and smoother. Adding that extra layer of yellow makes the orange pop better, but it hasn't gotten much smoother. Let me just clean up these markers and we'll try the other side. Straight back in with that yellow, and now we come straight in with our blue. Straight away, we're getting a light green color here, but as soon as I go back in with our yellow, bang, we've got quite a vivid green. Realistically, with this blending test here, we could have done this a couple of different ways. We're just mixing paint on the page, but I think the gradients worked out really well to show how well these pens blend. It's an interesting blend because the paint combining was so much easier than I thought it would be. We've used markers before and I've had to go over that middle area a lot more to get that really obvious orange and really obvious green. But because the Posca flows so well, I really didn't have to do that here, which is very impressive. I'm also very pleased as well that we swapped to this new paper. There is so much paint going down here. Our old stock would have just melted to goop. The Bristol is holding up well. For delicate blending, this tip is still quite rough. You can see it obviously in the lines as I'm adding new paint here. For what I'm planning art-wise, it's not going to be an issue, but I think I've gotten a smoother blend with a finer tip, or even that brush tip. But for the size tip that we do have here, the Posca have done quite well. I'm giving them a B in the blending test. I suspect we would have gone higher if we were looking at a brush tip. Our next test is an evolution of the blending test. While I'm calling it the straight gradient test, it's really about gradienting and blending multiple colors together rather than just gradienting with one. These Posca acrylic markers are either on or off, particularly with the bullet tip like we have here. So one color alone wouldn't be super exciting. For this test, I'm choosing 5 different markers for each gradient, and you guessed it, gradienting. The colors for this one on the left are going to be reddish tones: beige 45, apricot P4, orange 4, red 15, and brown 21. On the other side is pink and purple tones. We have white 1, light pink 51, pink 13, lavender P11, and violet 12. What we're going to do here in this test is we're going to blend together all of our colors as best as we possibly can between the different tones to hopefully make a seamless gradient. Don't get too excited as we start here. I started with the original 140 GSM paper and it melted. You can see here as I go straight into that second marker with that paper, how it's peeling and falling apart. Pay attention, sunshine. Lesson learned, we'll stick to our Bristol paper. The Bristol paper is straight away much better. It's still not perfect, but it is much stronger than the original paper, as I'm definitely not getting as much tearing and peeling, which is great. Because these are shorter areas between colors, it's not super smooth transitions as we had in our previous test. But I am still finding these markers quite easy to blend together, particularly when we have tones that are relatively close to each other. The Posca still feel a little bit scratchy from our bullet tip. They get smoother when the tip is loaded with paint as the paint lubricates the page, but the tip's robustness means they don't have a lot of give in them. It sort of feels like this pen is more intended to be used on surfaces that aren't paper. Our first one is almost done, and yeah, it's gradiented sorta in part, but again, it's not quite as good as I was expecting. Let's try the purple and pink side. It's working very similar. I've started with the white going into the light pink. That pink is quite easy to blend into the white because it's really picking up the white paint into the marker tip. So I'm able to blend that a bit easier. But as soon as we get to the middle pink, because it's a small transition, it's not as smooth. The lavender and the darker purple are pretty much the same. While I'm glad I caught myself and remembered to swap over and do this one on the Bristol paper, this test wasn't quite as easy as I'd hoped. Overall, once we actually got on with it, the paint from these markers blended and felt okay. But in trying to make that gradient, I think we're hitting a limitation with this tip. It feels like the paint is smooth and very much wants to gradient and blend together well, but because of the smaller areas of transition, coupled with this stiff tip, we're getting quite a steppy, rough gradient. I think if we brought in a brush or even a finger over the top to smooth it, we would have an amazing gradient, which would work really well, but by themselves, they are not doing great here. For a gradient that is okay, but limited by the technical abilities of these pens, I am giving them a C+ for gradienting. Take that with a grain of salt though, as the paint blends really well. It's time to give that tip a chance to shine. I have got a whole heap of different surfaces here to see how and if the Posca will work well on other things than paper. We have some stone, some more paper, some laminated paper, so like plastic, canvas, wood, rough tile, and the always tricky glass. Hopefully this will give us a really broad spectrum of things that the Posca will and won't work on. First up is our stone. This is actually really easy to work on. It is very smooth, but because it's not porous, I am finding them a little bit hard to control. And I guess, unsurprisingly, it took a really long time for the paint to dry on, so it turned out a little bit messier than I wanted. Our paper, which is our 400 GSM Bristol, much like our tests, is really solid and showing off our colors well. Easy to use and control here with, again, great opacity. Next up is plastic. This is just a laminated piece of scrap. It's not too bad and the Posca holds really well when dried, but it's not as good as a coverage as I'd have hoped for because it's not a porous surface. Onto our heart-shaped canvas. This is quite easy to use because of that slightly porous surface. These markers, I'm very happy on it. I also think this little guy has turned out to be my favorite. It's really easy to work on our wood as well. It's slightly harder surface, so the pens glide really well across it, but because it's wood, it's slightly porous and the paint feels like it wants to grip on it. The tile is similar here. These markers seem to work much better on rougher surfaces, but like our stone, this one took quite a while to dry. Finally, our glass. Glass is always an unknown because it's so smooth. But to be fair, this is actually doing better than I thought it would be. It's very easy to apply, although I think I've hit the point I can't add any more without mixing it. Let me just let this dry for a few minutes and throw a second layer over the top. Overall, great! The Poscas felt really good on everything, to a point that on the things like the canvas and wood, slightly harder porous surfaces, they felt like they preferred working on that. I think we still got the best color on the paper, but everything else was really very good. A couple of them, particularly the harder surfaces like the stone and the glass, I obviously had to take a little bit of extra care to let them dry before adding to them. But once you realize they needed that, they're very easy to use. Let's just do a tiny extra test here and give these a little bit of a scratch to see how they've bonded. For this test, I'm going to be using our trusty little plastic scraper. First up is the stone. Sorry, little puppy dude. Let me just scratch this up. It's done pretty good. It's taken a bit off, but not as much as I'd have expected. Next is our paper. That Bristol is some tough paper. The scratching has indented it slightly, but nothing bad. Our plastic is next, and oof, that hasn't bonded super well. It's holding on, but I've scratched our dog up a lot. This is obviously a different bit of canvas, but I like the original so much that I gave it away. But this replacement canvas has held up really well. It's tough. That tile! Well, the scraping has taken a bit off, but it's actually done more damage to the scraper than the paint. It's bonded quite well. Our wood has held up really well as well. I can see it scraped a bit off, but it's not really lifted any paint. The glass is the one that I would normally suspect paint would struggle with, and no surprise, it's taken a bit of a beating. Our poor puppy. There we go! On anything porous, this held up really well. Nothing super surprising, to be perfectly honest. Everything needs something to bond to, and the less there is, the more likely it's going to scratch off. The only thing that I was really surprised by was the stone. It did much better than I thought that it would. So, for a strong performance in a surface test, I'm giving the Posca a B+ for great bonding. Sticking them right up here. It's time for our last test, the joy factor. Do these markers spark joy, or do they cause despair? This test is very much my personal opinion, which I've formed across all of these tests as we've used them today. As always, let's do some arting while we chat about them. For today's arting, I have this very fancy watering can. It's very shiny and a little bit boring, so let's see what we can do to fix that. First things first, the last time we did a marker artwork on a strange shape, I found it much easier if I actually planned out what we were sketching first, rather than just going for it. For our watering can, I'm doing an artwork story-inspired piece, which is these little critters who are trying to help pour out the water out of the spout. It's either gonna work out really cute or fail miserably. I did notice on our surface test, I really struggled with details on our characters because the tip was just a little bit too thick. So I've cheated yet again and grabbed myself a set of the Posca 1MR, which is Posca's finest tip. This is really gonna help getting my artwork drawn on such a weird shape and maybe just help me fine up our edges at the end. Let me just make sure this can is ultra clean. It's a galvanized metal, so it's pretty slippery and I want to give the paint the best chance to stick. As I start on our drawing, I've made an executive decision. Rather than covering up all of this silver, I'm going to incorporate it into my work. Most of this initial sketch will be covered up by our colors, so I'm not too worried about making every line perfect here. There we go. At least we've got our outline to help us follow it along. It's a bit messy right now, but that's fine. Okay, let's start with our big markers. I've started on this one side here in the middle, this little guy with the bucket up to his face. I think I'll make him a kind of peachy color, but because there are so many characters here, I'll be able to include all of the colors we have available in our range. Okay, as always, let's start at the start. Looks-wise, these markers designs is quite industrial and coolish. I say ish because there is just so much stuff on them, it takes away from what they could be. It doesn't need it all there, and it would make them look much better with slightly less. A little thing I've noticed as I've used them, I really do like that their caps here are quite tight. That means we won't have them falling off and making the markers dry out. Hopefully that means they last a lot longer. The tips themselves are really quite scratchy on paper, but they have felt and do feel much smoother on harder surfaces, including our watering can here. This feels more grippy than the glass, but not quite as easy to work on as the canvas. They are very easy to maneuver around our can, which is helping with this weird shape. Shape and thickness wise, the markers feel good in my hand. Blending wise, these markers did good and bad in our testing. Honestly, as I'm drawing here, a lot of the problems seem to be easy to compensate for. I'm finding it fairly easy to get them to blend, to either make a new color or give our little monsters some shading. But on those tests, the shape and hardness of that bullet tip made them a little bit difficult to work with, which is a shame as the paint feels like it wants to blend well. With this tip, anything more than a basic blend gets a little bit tougher. You'll notice I'm doing a lot of block colors here to compensate, as again, it just doesn't allow for super fine gradients. One thing I am finding quite frustrating as I go along, however, is occasionally they gush. I know it sounds a bit weird, but as I push my marker down to get more paint out as I'm drawing along, instead of it coming out gradually and politely, it comes flowing out in a great big rush of paint. So rude. I have managed to adapt to combat that by giving the marker a good push and letting the gush happen on another bit of paper. Then I'm able to come back in with a full nib of paint. It is much less messy and chaotic, but it does take extra time, and I am a little bit concerned that all this gushing might use up all my paint really quickly. It's not ideal. Speaking of time, you may have thought I learnt my lesson on the stone surface test, but if I'm not letting the paint dry fully, it's not bonding well to the galvanized iron. I've mucked up the hose here just a little bit because I was slightly impatient. But if I take my time and roll the can around a bit so each color block can dry before I come back to it, it seems to be making things much easier. The big thing I really love about these markers is that they're so opaque. I love that I don't have to keep going over them to get a solid color. They feel really juicy, which, as we saw earlier, is both a blessing and a curse. However, I do think this ultra juice would mean that they could certainly handle most surfaces, even super absorbent ones. And you know what? That's what these markers feel like they're for. Doing art on lots of different things. Weird things. We have used acrylic markers before, which have felt like, let's do some acrylic art on a canvas or something. But these kind of make me want to go and draw monsters on a stop sign or something. They've really got that vibe. Speaking of vibe, well, not really, but I needed a segue to talk about price. The Poscas aren't cheap, at least here in Australia. You can buy them individually, but this 16 color kit is around $80 Australian. Is $80 good value? I guess that's up to you, but for me, they do seem to last longer, are much better colors and more opaque than other cheaper markers. I like things that work well. We're on to the final side here, and this is going down so much better than the first. I think I've reached a happy medium with our paint gushing and also letting the paint dry enough so that I can add colors over the top and it doesn't smudge. Taking a little bit of time to dry is also helping me. I'm also finding understanding the drying time means if I'm not happy with the work I do, I have enough time to pull off the paint and redo it again. Time and patience are the key here with working with Posca, and once you figure that out, they are very fun. Well, now our watering can is really starting to come together, and while it's looking pretty great, let's ask that ever important question, do the Posca paint pens spark joy for me? Yes, they do. I am very comfortable giving Posca my joy today. I like things that do exactly what I expect them to do, and the Posca haven't disappointed. The fact that they can smoothly draw so well on so many things, are so opaque, and at the same time be comfortable and easy to use, it's a bit of a no-brainer. I actually think that the Posca are the best acrylic markers I've had the chance to use, and the price for them, for me, is pretty good for what you get. Now I think, and it's a big call here, they are still the undisputed gold standard for paint markers. I do wish that for the style of work I do, I had gotten the brush tips to test as well. With a tip that's a little bit softer, most of my work would have been much easier. They would have likely scored higher on several of our tests, but the bullet are the most common, so we've stuck to that. Let's check out our watering can. What do you think? It is very cute. You can really see the first side isn't quite as good as the second one, but once I realized I had to let them dry just a bit more and how to control that gushing thing, everything went so much smoother. I think I like this little group of guys the best, all backed up by my handsome bird Percy, carrying buckets of course. Okay, for a joyful joy factor, I'm going to give the Posca Acrylic Markers an A. Slotting them right in here. The last thing we're gonna do today is give the Posca a final big score. This is where we take all of the results these markers have from all of our other tests and aggregate them to see where their final score sits. For our final overall score for the Posca Acrylic Markers, they receive a A-. Well done, Posca. If we put them on our big scale, they go right up here. So that's it for the Posca Acrylic Paint Pen Markers. That is quite a mouthful. Thanks for sticking with me on this journey of painty goodness. What do you guys think? Is the Posca worth it for you? Have you used anything better? And if you've used them, is the brush tip easier for art? I am so curious to try more acrylic markers and compare them to the Posca, but when I do, I'm gonna try them with a brush tip. In the meantime, if you want some of your own Poscas, I've stuck some links below. Every click helps just a tiny bit. Next time, we're checking out something a little bit different. I am taking a look at the brand spanking new Color Cubes version 2 by the always lovely Sarah Renee Clark. Until next time, however, if you want more of my face in your face, have a look at the links below. We also have a very active Discord that you can sign up for. And if you want to chat, come and hang out with us on Twitch. I am there Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesday afternoons. That's it for now. Have a brilliant day, everyone. I'll talk to you all very soon. Bye.